All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Speed Up Your Escrow and Close the Deal. Before we begin, I'd like to share some brief housekeeping rules. First, all attendees will be muted for the duration of the webinar. We are accepting questions and feedback via the chat box in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. We will address all questions at the end of the webinar. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to all attendees via email within 24 hours after this webinar. And finally, at the end of this webinar, we ask that you stick around a little while to complete our post-webinar survey, which will also include an added thank you gift to all of our attendees at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Casey LeBlanc, where he will discuss how to speed up your escrow process and close the deal. Casey?
Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for attending our webinar here on how to speed up your escrow and close the deal. We are going to attempt to keep it entertaining and educational. We're going to skip to the next slide here and jump right in. In this presentation, we're going to cover a couple of things. One is some interesting statistics that we found to lay a foundation for where the real estate market is. Then we're going to jump into talking about the state of escrow, so getting into where we see the industry and the challenges that arise once the contract is consummated and people move into closing. We're also going to talk, finally, about the technology and the things that technology can do to kind of alleviate some of the problems that we see from an escrow standpoint. One of the things that I want to talk about is the problems that have arisen within escrow, but mainly focus on the solutions and talking about how new Venture Escrow, as well as some of the technology that we've developed, how we're going to overcome and combat some of those challenges. So, new Venture Escrow, we've been in San Diego since 2011. We have 3 convenient locations to serve the community, one being in North San Diego off the 15 and the 56. Our corporate office is in Mission Valley, and then we have a 3rd office in Chula Vista. So we consider that a south, a central, and a north location to accommodate whether it be an agent or a borrower or a client need at that time. We've also founded the VentureTrac app, and so we're going to talk a lot about that towards the middle to end of the presentation. So some interesting statistics, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the statistics, but some of the things that we've pulled to really identify where the sweet spots are for the market. And some of the things that we talk about are buyer and seller outlook, and again, how technology influences some of that. The buyers are looking at about 20 properties per transaction. So they're on the internet, they're surfing, they're looking around and going and seeing quite a number of properties. Sellers, on average, the properties are listed for about 2.5 months, and they receive about 6 offers for their listing. They typically will spend about a year on deciding whether or not they want to list a property, which is quite a long time. Usually we're seeing that it's going to take an agent to influence that seller to actually move forward with the sale of their property. Some challenges. We have seen technology really take over a lot of and influence a lot of our lives over the last several years. The real estate industry in general is a lot of the technology has really been founded and based on the front end. And when I say the front end, what I'm talking about is prior to a contract that's been consummated, so signed by all parties, including agents. That's what I am talking about when I talk about the front end of a transaction. So whether it be a client looking for an agent to buy or sell a property, or the client and agent looking for property that fits the needs, those are the things that I'm talking about when I talk about the front end. Consumers are extremely well-versed on technology, and we found that a lot of the technology is centered and geared on that front end part of the transaction. So you'll see here on some of our statistics, tech-savvy customers are kind of taking some of that into their own hands, and so we're seeing a decrease in the use of real estate agents. Half of the buyers feeling that they actually settled for a property, and 96. The interesting statistic here is 96% of sellers expected a response from their agents within 1 hour. So again, there's not an asterisk next to that that says 1 hour only on, business hours, so 9 to 5. No, that's 1 hour 24/7. So the communication is really an important component of a transaction. And what we're going to talk about is the communication part of it, not only on the front end when you're identifying an agent or identifying a property, but really from contract to close. So really looking at not only in the front end of the transaction, but also what we're going to talk about from the back end of a transaction. So once the deal gets into contract and we're moving it on that a typical 30-day escrow and into the closing. With every challenge, there's opportunity. And so with opportunity, we're talking about the internet, the technology, social media. I'm not telling anybody who's on this call something they don't already know. If you're in real estate, you understand social media is here to stay. Clients, whether it be prospects or clients, are all on social media looking at agent profiles, looking at websites. They want to gather more information. So some of the interesting statistics that we pulled, obviously people using Facebook, majority of buyers find their agent 65% of the time online. So it's really important to have a presence. 91% say that they're using a mobile device through the course of the home purchase. So people are mobile, people are using the internet, people are using social media for a variety of things. And again, we're at New Venture Escrow and through our technology looking to continue that as an extension of the agent through the contract and through the closing. So moving forward, technology has really advanced, and it's really taken hold of the real estate community. We've seen huge companies, Zillow and Trulia, Realtor.com, really focus on that front end of the transaction. And they've exploded as far as their popularity, as far as the usage with agents as well as the consumer. We're finding that it's just easier to identify properties. It used to be 15, 20 years ago where agents were the only one. They had a stronghold on the inventory, so they were the only ones who knew about what properties were available, things that were on the multiple listing services, and then they would communicate that to their clients. Now with the internet, you're starting to see consumers are much more prevalent to what's out there, what's on the market, what the costs are, what the values are. So again, it's important that as an agent, you create a value proposition for your client as to what you're going to do, and not just in the negotiation of the deal, whether it be from the buy side or the sell side, but also what you create from a value proposition with your service provider. So that's where New Venture Escrow comes in as a qualified partner, where we're going to be that extension of your business and really take what you've established with your client on the front end of the transaction and continue that forward through the closing. So I think it's actually one of the biggest things that I see as far as a missing component within the industry. A lot of the technology, effort, and energy is put into that front part of the transaction, whereas once it goes into contract, there's what we hear all the time. It's a black box. We don't understand what's gone on. We don't understand what's next, and that's where we're trying to create a solution to that, and we're going to talk about that in the next few minutes. State of escrow. Interesting, and I did a little bit more research since I put this together. The average home was on the market in 2013 for 55 days. That number is actually coming down, so we're seeing that in 2014, that number is actually 44. So it's interesting that we're coming off of a short sale market, and we're seeing that the close of escrow is actually down close to 20%. So that's a good thing, and it's continuing to go in that direction as we move from a short sale market where a lot of bank-owned properties into a traditional market where you're seeing sellers have equity in their homes and being able to sell for a profit. Again, we look at an interesting statistic with this. What would be the one thing that a seller would want out of the transaction that could be improved? And we hear this all the time: better communication, more transparency, a lot of confusion in a transaction because sellers and buyers don't do this with the frequency and the velocity that we do, as industry professionals. So what we're trying to do is identify this problem and try to figure out what's the best and easiest way for us to solve the problem with automation. And we're still seeing escrow typically paper-dominated industry, too much paper, too much back and forth with signatures. So we're trying to solve some of those problems through our technology. Technology has helped the real estate industry. You're seeing the transparency with on the front end with as far as inventory, pricing, value of properties, and so forth. Trulia and Zillow are probably two of the biggest, although they've just recently partnered up, and then one is bought in the other. We're seeing that those companies are extremely valuable to the consumer from that standpoint. E-signatures is really popular on the front end with agents with DocuSign. We're seeing probably about 65% of our contracts are coming over with digital signature. And again, once it goes into contract, we're not seeing a lot of escrow companies and title companies adopt a lot of the electronic signature functionality that is available today. At New Venture, we do have electronic signature capabilities, which is a real difference maker for us from the standpoint of being able to offer that to clients that are mobile and can utilize some of the technology advances on the web. How technology helps escrow. We're going to talk about our free VentureTrac app. We've created some technology that is different, where we feel like we've created a better process for the closing. So we call it internally from contract to close. So once an agent, the buyer, the seller, the agents have all consummated a contract and we have an escrow that is opened, the first thing that you need to do is open escrow with New Venture. Once that escrow is open with New Venture, we're starting a process internally that is going to give access to the parties our free technology. So you'll first need to open escrow. Secondly, you'll need to download the mobile application. So whether you're on an Android, you'll go through the Google Play Store, or if you're on an iPhone, the iTunes Store. It's a free download, and you just search under VentureTrac, download the app, and you'll have instant access. You'll get an email with specific login where you'll have the security features dependent upon which party you are in the transaction. So if you're an agent, you'll have agent priority. If you're a buyer or a seller, you'll have those permissions as well. So as an agent, one of the things that we hear from agents all the time is we have several properties in escrow. We have several properties that we have closed. It's hard to manage all of those in one spot. So we give our agents access to do all of that through the technology that we offer. So every escrow that you open with New Venture is going to be categorized right under the property list. So you'll see all of your inventory, whether it's closed or in process, through the address in which you're closing the transaction, the property in which escrow has been opened or closed. So you can click right directly on the property at that point, and you'll come to the second screen, which is basically an index of certain functionality that the app is going to offer. From there, you just jump right in, and whether you're an agent or whether you're a buyer or seller, you jump right into the status. So we like to say we're going to be able to save an agent and also a consumer time and energy and stress by having everything updated live 24/7 throughout the transaction. So what does that mean? Well, essentially, we have the technology directly communicating with our internal software. And so as we're doing work in our software, it's updating the technology live. And so before you can email or call us with any questions as to statusing, updates, what's been done, what's next, those things are going to be available to everyone who has access to the app live. And so as statuses are pending or done, you're going to see exactly what's happened and what's next. So as you look at that first screen under tasks, you're going to see certain things are checkmarked. Those are the tasks that have been done. If you have questions as to what, sometimes in escrow we have escrow speak, we call it. And what that means is it's terminology that we use. It's industry specific. That doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to everybody all the time. So what we've done is when you click on any of those buttons, it's going to give you a brief description on what those terms mean and how they equate to your transaction, so you get a better understanding as to what all the different tasks involved in a closing of an escrow, what they are, and how they correlate to your transaction. If you see on the bottom there with payoff order, there's a kind of a circle, an unfinished circle there. That basically is our kind of like a diagram showing that it's still pending and we're working on it. So You'll be able to see if you click on it on what our estimated date on which we expect that to be done. So again, you see throughout 30-day or a typical 30-day escrow what's been done, what's next, what's pending, when things are expected as you click through some of the buttons. The next thing on the second screen, on the second phone there, is documents. We hear all the time from agents as well as the consumer, there's a lot of documents that are involved in an escrow transaction, and we completely agree. Trust me, we have to store all of those records for 3 to 5 years. So what we do is we give access to both the agent and the consumer to the most important documents in a transaction, and we do it in perpetuity, so meaning you have access to these documents for as long as you need them. We don't shut off the access at any given time. So as long as you have a phone that works and you have the username and access, you'll be given access to all the documents for as long as you need them. Again, what we see a lot of is that people close a transaction. A year later, their CPA will need certain documents, the note, the deed, the HUD, and you'll have access to all that information right from your phone. So if you were to click on any of those documents within the app, you'd be given access to email it direct from your phone. You can pull it up PDF automatically so you can see the document, view it, and also email it direct from there. So if you need to forward it on to someone, you'd be given access to do that directly from the app. Okay, so the other couple of neat things that are involved with the mobile application are the contacts. So everyone that's involved in the transaction is going to be easily accessible directly from one of the buttons in the app. Again, we do not include buyer contact information as well as seller contact information. We keep those parties completely separate from being able to communicate directly with each other, as that causes more problems than are necessary. But all vendors involved, so agent information, escrow information, title information, all the realtors and lenders, all of that contact information is in one place. So at the click of a button, you can call or email directly from the app. Now, what that does is just keep people accountable to with contact information for a given transaction. Our best agents have several listings and closings going on at the same time. All this does is just keep them organized. You'll see one of the new features within the app on the first screen is the insurance button. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about how this app actually benefits you as the agent, but more importantly, the seller. When you click on the insurance button, we've negotiated a deal with an insurance carrier that has given us an exclusive deal. So no other escrow company is able to offer this type of product. And now what we do with our agents is we give this product to you as a benefit to your seller. So if you're a listing agent and you're talking to a potential seller, if you close escrow through us, not only do you get this free technology, but through the technology, we've negotiated a deal where if you click the insurance button, you can redeem a seller's certificate for what we call our seller's protection policy. In a transaction, in an escrow, typically you'll find everyone has errors and omissions insurance except for the seller. Well, as an escrow company, we're typically cutting big, large checks of proceeds to the seller. So they're the ones with the most exposure. Again, we don't want anyone to get into a lawsuit, but this policy does protect in the event of a lawsuit, any lawsuit, for up to 6 months from the close of escrow. The way that we look at it is that you're going to close escrow as a seller or an agent anyways. 99% of transactions use a professional closing settlement agent, an escrow company. We say, why wouldn't you use us as your provider, given that you have the free technology for your buyer and your seller as well as you as the agent, but also this added bonus of a gift that no one else can offer. So your insurance policy basically protects that seller in the event of a lawsuit, and it's redeemed directly through the technology. So you click on insurance, there's a certificate that comes up, and at the bottom there's a redemption button that you click, and automatically at the close of escrow, you're going to get a certificate as the seller, basically stating all the details of your policy. This policy is in place from X date to X date, so 6 months from the close of escrow, and all the contact information that you need. Again, this is a free included bonus within the app that we've negotiated with an insurance carrier exclusive to anyone doing business with new Venture Escrow and also through VentureTrac. So benefits for the agent. What are some of the benefits as an agent? you're able to view all your listings. So inventory is critical. If you have 10, 12, 15, 20 transactions within a given month or a given year, the paper, the amount of contacts, the amount of different things that are moving, a lot of different moving parts throughout those transactions all at a given time, all of the inventory is stored and tracked from one spot. So if you're working on a weekend, working in the morning or at night, whether you as an agent or you as your client, you can always see what's happened and what's next. You can also track all the different documents moving around. So if you need access to a document where we may not be physically in the office or even open, you'll have that throughout hours that aren't typically available. We talk about real-time progress tracking. It's important for you as the agent. It's also important for your buyer or your seller. They want to know what's happened, what's next, and also be explained some of the different things throughout the transaction. All escrow documents are stored PDF, and you also have the ability to email direct from the mobile app. Manage your contacts directly from the app. So again, if you close a transaction in January, you can go back towards the end of the year and just have all that contact information, which is really important. What are the benefits to the buyers and sellers? We've touched on some of these, but I think it's worth going back on is, again, the access to real live statusing updates. A lot of times we hear from buyers and sellers, I got into contract, but I didn't understand what was next. I was always concerned. I wasn't doing enough. I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what had happened. So the statusing is one of the key components of the app for a buyer and a seller. They want to know what's happening. They want to be explained what these things mean throughout a transaction. So we feel like our app does that automatically. So as an agent, if we're able to take some of that work off of your table, you're able to go out and get more business. We're going to take care of your client from contract to close. We're going to take care of the buyer and the seller and make it a very transparent process from that contract to close stage, where we've found there's not a lot of technology that's out there. All the technology and the focus and the emphasis has been based on that front end, identifying the property, negotiating the value. Once it gets into contract, we see that it continues on a very paper-oriented process, and a very much a kind of a black box as far as what's happened and what's next. So we feel like the statusing is a really important component of what we're doing from the standpoint of this technology. Again, the documents and the milestones are all other additional benefits. But as a seller, not necessarily the buyer, but as the seller, you're able to also redeem that insurance product that we talked about. So it's an errors and omissions policy that's included through the technology. With that said, I'll end it at this, is that, again, we understand a lot of people have an escrow partner. What we're trying to do as an escrow partner is be an extension of you as your agent and your business. And any agent that's successful wants to provide value to their client. One of the big components of a value-add proposition with an agent is being able to refer service providers. We're an escrow company. We're a service provider. Typically, sellers and sellers' agents will pick services in a transaction. At New Venture Escrow and through our technology, we believe that we're going to be an extension, a valuable extension to you as the agent, and specifically to your seller and your buyer. So we can take that, and basically we look at it as kind of a track race to the close. So we're going to take the baton, and the baton being the contract, and take it to the finish line to make sure that the buyers and the sellers have an extremely beneficial, enjoyable experience throughout that 30 to 45-day closing of escrow, where we've seen and identified the problems being so vast as far as the communication. We're going to alleviate a lot of that through automation and through technology, and make sure that those buyers and sellers, as well as you as the agent, have a great experience through those 30 to 45 days of closing. So we have a phone number here, and if you are interested, please feel free to reach out, call, or email.
Thank you so much, Casey, for your time today, and also to all the attendees who were able to make it. Like Casey said, you're welcome to visit the New Venture Escrow website or call at any time if you're interested in your escrow services or VentureTrac. It seems like we didn't have any questions during the course of the webinar, so thank you again for being able to attend, and we invite you to take our brief post-webinar survey at the end of this meeting. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Caroline.